Have you ever met someone that just truly you feel inspired by, you feel motivated by, and you feel that aspiration of their true passion and desire to make changes, not for themselves, but for so many other women that are out there in the world? And that's exactly what happened when I came across this beautiful woman, this beautiful soul with a heart-centered mission to help change the lives of millions of people, women in particular, around the world. Brita Fernandez Schmidt was the woman who I met 18 months ago at a Marie Claire event, and she was speaking from the heart of how she is able to put her passion that she felt from a very young age to a full, true purpose to make changes in the world of people, women who have suffered from genocide, who have come from war-torn countries, and who are in need of leadership, guidance, and support to know that they can live a better life than they have done for the past. And that's what this woman does, and she is so incredible, and I'm so excited to bring her here to share her journey, her story, and her passion with you guys, the listeners. So if you feel that this is a story, a mission that somebody else could really benefit from, that you know somebody who has been in this situation or needs guidance or support, or you yourself just want to support the cause, then please do go ahead and support Women for Women. They are an incredible charity in the UK that are helping women globally. And thank you so much for tuning in to this episode, and we really do value your support by just liking and sharing and leaving a comment. That is what we are here for, to help share the message of women can be empowered and women can live a more vibrant life no matter what their circumstances have been. It's how we recreate the story from here on in. Welcome to Your Vibrant Life podcast with me, Alison Stockton, the founder of Vibrant Balanced Health, health and wellness expert, and author of best-selling book, The Woman I Am Becoming. Thank you so much for joining on this podcast, where we will be sharing every week top tips, tricks, and inspiration of how you too can live your most vibrant life, stepping into areas of personal development, self-love, self-appreciation, spirituality, and becoming the best version of yourself and living your most vibrant life. We're going to share with you steps and advice on health, spirituality, self-love, self-care, self-worth, and how to grow into the most incredible woman that you've always desired to be. This is a space for women to learn, to grow, and to live their healthiest, happiest life with women who are here ready to support you. We are so happy to welcome you here. And if you feel so called to, please do leave a comment at the end of the show to let us know that you've enjoyed it, share it with a friend or two, and inspire somebody today to live their best life and to learn to love the life that they live. We are so grateful for you being here, and we wish you the most incredible journey into living your most vibrant life. I need to bring to your attention that this episode may seem a little bit graphic for many of you listening. We are talking to Britta, where she has visited war-torn countries, and women have been subjected to genocide and mutilation, as well as violence against women. So please, if this is a little bit graphic for you, just close your ears and wait until that section of the podcast has finished, and then continue listening to show support for Women for Women. Thank you for joining me today on this episode, and I have the most incredible guest for you, Brita Fernandez Schmidt, who has had a passion and a life's purpose since the age of 14 to help women around the world be who they are meant to be, with self-belief and understanding that their life is valued so much. Britta is the executive director of Women for Women UK, who is a charity worldwide and also focusing in Europe, and our global advocacy for work to empower women with their entire being. So Britta, I'm so excited to have you on here. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me.
Oh, thank you, Alison. I'm so excited that you've asked me to come on your podcast.
I love your journey, your experiences, your life's purpose and your work. And I just want to just honestly say thank you. Britta and I met at, I think it was Marie Claire in London in 2018. And I was just so inspired by Britta, her work, what she had to say, and how she truly, truly has this passion and purpose to help women all over the world, especially from war-torn countries. And Britta's had an amazing experience of life. And I just want you to share how this all began, because you were 14 when you had this burning desire to make change.
Yeah, thank you, Alison. It's so interesting, isn't it? I think I talk to a lot of people, and women in particular, who remember moments in their lives that have become really important or kind of significant, particularly when you look back. And I very vividly remember moving from Germany, where I grew up, to Venezuela at the age of 14, because my parents were going to work at the German school in Venezuela, in Caracas. And for me, really, my entire life changed completely, moving from Germany to Venezuela and being exposed to such a different part of the world, and seeing poverty firsthand and seeing how it disproportionately affects women ignited this fire in me. I think I was definitely meant to find something to ignite this fire, because I do really believe that this has been something within me that was waiting to erupt. And I think it did. What can I say?
So you went from Germany to Caracas at 14. Could you speak Spanish? Could you speak English, or was it just German at this point?
Yeah, exactly. No, I spoke German. And of course, when my family knew we were moving, we then had intensive Spanish lessons over the summer. But because actually I absolutely didn't want to move, I was outraged and very angry with my parents. I didn't want to move. I had all my friends. It's this kind of age where you have a very close friend group, and yeah, anyway, so I didn't want to move. And so I kind of half-heartedly went to these Spanish lessons. And so, to be honest, when we arrived in Venezuela, I didn't really speak Spanish, but I was still very, very happy to criticize my parents' Spanish, of course, as children do. Anyway, but then very quickly, once you are in that environment, and there were a couple of lessons at school that were taught in Spanish, I very quickly had to pick it up, and I did pick it up, and I loved it, actually. I absolutely, and I love speaking Spanish now. So yeah, but it was huge uprooting.
I bet. So not only have you got this rage as a 14-year-old, you then discover that you're outraged by all of these inequalities that you see in this. Would you say it was impoverished at the time, going back?
Yeah, I mean, of course, what's happening in Venezuela right now is extreme, and definitely at the time when I moved there in '85. There was still a lot of wealth, a lot and prosperity, but there was also a lot of poverty. And I think Caracas is an interesting city where you have the shanty towns next to each kind of part of the richer, where the people with more wealth live. And so you have this contrast of the shanty towns and the big country houses and country clubs, and you're seeing it all the time. You're exposed to it. It's not tucked away in just in the outskirts. And so, and I hadn't really seen poverty in that way before.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because whereabouts in Germany did you grow up?
In the northwest. So
it's not. You don't really see that breakdown of poverty to middle class to upper class, do you?
No, you don't, exactly, and a complete lack of infrastructure. And as we were driving up from the airport, I remember we were actually driving, the person who picked us up thought it would be a good idea to give us a scenic route, and we were driving up through the shanty towns where people were living literally in cardboard boxes, and it did feel completely surreal, and also just it really worried me. I didn't understand why that was going on. So
when you say that about you, it worried you. How did you feel about your own safety? Being a 14-year-old in a new country, were you free? Were you free to go about?
Well, actually, this is really interesting. You should ask me about this, because I was reflecting on it the other day, because I remember that this person who drove us up, because there are two ways to go. One way is the kind of scenic route over the mountains through the shanty towns, and the other one is on the highway that just takes you pretty much straight into Caracas. And so as we were driving through the scenic route, he actually said, "Oh, can you put the windows up and put the close your doors?" And I just thought to myself, that is just not because it was he was instilling fear in me, and I didn't want to be fearful, because actually that just didn't sit right. Any of this sat right with me, and it's taken me a lot of years of thinking about this to really understand what was going on there. And I think what was going on there was that I instinctively knew that fear is not going to resolve the issue, the root cause of what we were looking at there, right?
Yeah.
And that actually what is going to resolve it is if we call a spade, and we look at where's this inequality coming from and what can we do to address it. And it's definitely not going to be addressed by fear. Instilling fear in others, and that's something that I've it's been part of what I've been trying to do in the last.
So how did you get on at school? Was there any kind of charities that you joined at that time, having this passion that you saw all these inequalities? And we'll go on to more about what you did do later on. But at 14, coming into this country where you had this fear, but you also had this outrage that there was all of this going on, did you feel that you could do anything at 14?
Well, it's really interesting. I don't think I even knew what a charity was at that age.
Okay.
And I definitely don't remember coming across any. But what I do remember is that we had a woman who helped us in our home, Gladys. She was an amazing woman. And she, because my mum was also working, so she helped us at home. And she had 4 children, all from different men, who always left her. And so she was the single mom. And I remember, and she would tell me a little bit about her life. And I would always want to kind of grab her arm and just instinct of saying, you don't have to let yourself be treated like this. You're an amazing woman. You're really powerful. You don't need to go with men who abuse, don't really honor you and who just, leave you. And so I would do that, and I would have a lot of friends who I would want to help. I mean, there was this instinct, I want to always help people who perhaps are not quite believing in their potential or allowing themselves to be treated in ways that they should not be treated. So that was what I remember. And then I also remember that I think I was a very difficult teenager for my parents. Really, I mean, now that I have teenage daughters myself, I'm like, okay, I'm really.
I'm sure you're outraged. You were in this country that you didn't particularly want to be in. You're 14. You're speaking a language that you weren't wholeheartedly wanting to learn, and then seeing all of this as well. So, going through school at that time in a different country, and you were still. I know that you've seen all of this inequality, but you were also in an almost privileged position. Growing up.
It's really hard, right? This is something that's very hard to come to terms with. And I think it's very hard for most of us who are aware of inequality and are aware of the incredible luck that we have, because this is luck. It's pure coincidence, right? That I was born into a German family and not into a Venezuelan, it's just, and I think this is something that I have always kept with me. And it's something that I spend a lot of time talking to donors who support the work that Women for Women International is doing about, because there's often people come and say, oh God, it's so great what you do. I feel so guilty. I have so much. And I'm like, okay, guilt? Absolutely no way. Okay, guilt, if it was up to me, we would just take guilt, put it in a rubbish bin, burn it, leave it. Guilt is not going to get us anywhere. It just doesn't even, it's not a useful feeling at all.
No.
Guilt is, right, it's about, don't feel guilty because you haven't done anything wrong, right? If you happen to have been born into this world, if you have a sense that you would like to do something, that's very different.
That's very different.
Let's talk about what you would like to do, right? Let's talk about that.
And the differences you can make.
Absolutely. And the difference also is that you that's right, you talk about what can change. You and you also believe in yourself, rather than, because guilt only is like you self-flagellate. So not only are you not making a difference, on top of that, you're making yourself feel worse. I mean, it's like a lose-lose situation, and I don't like lose-lose situations.
And it's an emotion. It's because it's not real. It's just an emotion that you can move forward through and make it more productive. Like you say, if you're guilty because you feel that you have all this money, do something with it. Be helpful to others as well as to yourself. Exactly. And I want to bring you on to that. It's like, when you were in school, you made that decision and you were a little bit rebellious with your parents. And when you felt that you had this passion and purpose that you needed to change things, even at the age of 14, did you share that message with your parents? And how was it received if you did?
Well, from what I remember, I don't think I was as as clear and kind of organized about my passion. I think I was more eruptive. And what I do remember is that I was witnessing and experiencing inequality also in my own family, right? And in terms of how my father would ask me to tidy the table and not ask my brother, who was only a year and a half younger, so he was completely capable of tidying a table. And that I do remember rebelling against that and kind of saying, what is this? This is ridiculous. And, And so I did, but I also remember having a lot of rage that I did not know how to channel, and I also remember feeling that my voice wasn't properly heard, and that
home,
at home, and at school, and in the wider world for sure, right? Yes.
Because when you reached obviously going through that and you're still at home and you have this kind of outrage of not being heard, what did you decide to do after finishing school? So this is the thing. This is maybe where I feel that I've always tried to follow that rage, and maybe it wasn't even a decision, actually. Maybe it was so strong that I couldn't do anything but follow it. Do you feel that this is your calling now? We'll get back to that in a second, but sometimes we talked earlier on about self-belief, and your message was already there. You just needed to follow the path and how to get it clearer, right?
For me, for sure, because now we said this earlier when we were chatting, with hindsight, it's so beautiful. You then see that there's been a path all along, and it was more about allowing yourself to go down that path. And the path can have many turns and twists, and sometimes the path goes down, and you think you're not making progress, but actually it's only to then send you further up again, right? And so. I deeply know that this was always exactly what I was meant to do, and it's just fulfilled me, and it's given me so much joy. It's given me a lot of pain, absolutely, but it's given me so much joy to be able to express that rage that I have, but also that love that I have, which is basically, it's the same thing, right? I just have this love for humans, and I want humans, in this case women, to know that they are of equal value, and that they have the same rights and the same potential, and that they need to believe that they have that. And that's really what drives me. And of course that is the same for myself, and I had to learn this, because I know I'm not going to just preach, I absolutely be the change you want to see. So I am every day saying those things to myself as well, because of course I grew up in a very gendered environment, as most of us have, and I also hold myself hostage, on a regular basis, and keep myself in these gendered boxes. Oh, that's not very feminine. Oh no, you shouldn't be doing this. Oh, that's very loud. Or you all these things. Like, I hate it. But the reality is, I have that voice in my head too. It's what you do with that voice, right? And so, yeah.
And I love when we spoke earlier on, we mentioned something about, how people see you, how people interpret you, or how people would judge you, no matter what country you're from, where you're at, what your income is, or all of these things. And one of the biggest things we said is, meet me as a human, meet me as a woman, not what I do, how much I earn, but meet me as an equal first.
Yeah. And I think it's probably the most powerful feeling that we can create for ourselves and for others. If we genuinely see the other person as a human and we don't box them immediately based on what they look like or where they live or what they have or don't have, etc. That, because then you open up possibilities. And I think fundamentally that's what we all want. We want to be genuinely seen for who we are as humans, not judged by whatever label we might have attached to us.
And the thing is, when you're going into all these different countries and what have you, it's a very profound saying. We don't know what we don't know. And if we don't know that there's other things out there available, then how are we to know? So that's why I think your work is so important, because you're empowering women to do this. But let's get back to, when you left school, the passion was there. You spoke to your parents. How did you make a decision to leave Venezuela you went to the UK for university? How and why did you think that was the right thing to do?
So I actually, to be really honest, I didn't want to leave Venezuela, but my parents
after not wanting to get there.
Sorry? Yeah, exactly. Typical, right? Typical children. But my parents suggested that it would be better to try and get a European degree rather than a Venezuelan degree because of the way the world was at the time, etc. Anyway, so I very reluctantly went to, but that was in 1990, and Germany had just reunited. The reunification had just happened, and universities were super overcrowded. And my parents suggested perhaps I wanted to go to the UK and study there because the university is a bit smaller and it's all a bit more intimate, and that might be nicer for me. And actually, I wasn't particularly keen on necessarily going back to Germany, so I'm like, okay, fine, I'll go to the United Kingdom. Let me do that. Again, not really knowing much because I had been a couple of times, but I didn't really know. And I chose the university literally by looking at the map and checking what was close to London airport so I could go back regularly to Venezuela. Anyway, so that's kind of how that happened.
And how did you choose what to study? And what did you study?
And so then I thought, okay, if I have to do this, then I'm gonna try and learn some more about Latin America and about the history and why it's happened that this beautiful continent has suffered so much and is often qualified as underdeveloped, and also that I wanted to learn more about inequality and women in particular. And I was very lucky. I met an incredible professor in my second year who's a feminist literary criticism professor and literature. And she was absolutely inspiring. And she really showed me that there is a whole world out there of people who feel like me, who feel outraged at the inequality between women and men, and who've been trying for centuries to change that. And so then I delved into the history of amazing women who've done that. Some who we know about, some who are more unsung heroines, and that was beautiful. It was felt like homecoming, honestly. So much so that I decided to then do a master's in women's studies because I just wanted more of this understanding of not feeling lonely, because I think part of this rage that you feel when you're younger that you can't really explain is also because you don't see many others around you expressing that rage, which of course is part of the conspiracy theory, because I also probably didn't express it as much as I could have. And so then others perhaps didn't see it either. And so it's like, oh, we're all in the closet. We're thinking we're the only ones, but actually, if we opened up, we would see, there's a whole gang.
But remember, we don't know what we don't know until you know.
Exactly.
So you mentioned something about just a second ago about the women that we don't know, the unsung heroes. We all know about Emily Pankhurst and all that she did, but who would you say stands out for you for women's rights? It doesn't have to even be in the last 100 years. It could be, whenever.
I know it's just really, really tough because there are so many. And I feel so lucky that I'm even able to say that, because if you had asked me when I was 14, 15, 16, whatever, I would maybe have been able to tell you one person. And now I have read so many amazing women who are brave and they are fearless and they are, oh my God, they're rocking the world, right? And I've met so many women who no one has ever even heard of, and they are changing their world. So that it's just, I literally cannot single out one.
Do you know what? To know that there are so many making changes, that in itself is impacting. That in itself.
This is it. And this is why we've Women for International, we've done this amazing campaign called #SheInspires And it's about celebrating the inspiration that are women, and how we all have women in our lives who inspire us. And to celebrate them. And so as part of that campaign, of course, I've often been asked, so who's the one that inspires you?
Yeah, that was my question. You're just answering it for me.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't have just one. And I feel so lucky that is the case. I always talk about this boardroom that I have in my heart of women that sit there, and every time it goes bigger, because there are more women who come and they sit there and they are there to remind me of the immense power that resides within all of us to overcome
everything. What you were saying then is, when you have that boardroom of women in your heart, that is just how much we are changing, because it's all about the collaboration and the impact we can change, as opposed to the competition, because we cannot make change single-handedly. It has to be together.
Absolutely. It's always together. And even when we feel the world is on our shoulders, actually, it's never just on our shoulders. If we allow ourselves to stop for a moment, and even if it's just remembering those women in the boardroom in your heart, or actually physically saying, will you help me? Can I talk to you? Yeah. Can I just run this idea by you? It's just sometimes, yes, our own personal development can be very lonely, because these are your own demons. These are your own dreams and hopes and that you're coming to terms with. But you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah, so true, so true. And let's just talk a little bit more here about the deep impact that you're making, because when we spoke before, you had this gut feeling at 14, and many women and men even don't really understand what this gut feeling is. And from my point of view, the gut and the brain are so directly correlated, and they have to be congruent to enable them to work. It's also about self-actualization. But from your point, we spoke about bringing self-belief into women's forefront of their thoughts.
Yes, so Women for Women International takes a very practical approach. We have a year-long program that we've developed. It's tried and tested, and we regularly improve, that delivers holistic support to women in countries affected by conflict. And these are women who are particularly socially and economically excluded and marginalized. But at the heart of that very practical program that gives you access to information around hygiene and nutrition and income generating skills and your rights and how to integrate with the community and all of these things. But at the heart of that is the deep belief that the power is within you. That you are your own change agent, that I cannot empower you. You can only empower yourself. But what I can do, I can be your number one cheerleader, right? I can be there to tell you that you can do it. I can provide access to knowledge, and knowledge is power. And we know that because you just said it earlier, when we don't know what we don't know, then that's ignorance. I think that's maybe what you do. But when you start to know what you don't know, and then you start to know what you know, then everything changes. And that is the process that we embark on, but always under the premise that the power is within you to create that transformation. And we provide the circumstances and the access to information and access to resources and the context. But at the heart of it all is this deep trust that you need to develop in yourself, but you also then extend to, in this case, Women for Women International, so that we can actually help you. And this developing this trust between the organization and the communities that we operate in is extremely important.
And I just want to kind of come back on that, because I think for anyone that's listening, they might not really understand the impact of what this year-long program is. And that year-long program has transformed women's lives globally, especially from some of the most horrific war-torn countries, from the most horrific underdeveloped countries where they're in conflict between themselves, where women are disempowered. Because I know when we were talking before and I asked you, where are some of the worst places that you have visited? Because you personally go out there to show support and to raise awareness for these women. So can you tell me a little and share with the listeners where you've been in the last 6 months that's really hit home to you how much your work and Women for Women is needed?
Yes, I've been to two places that have particularly resonated with me recently. The first one was northern Iraq, where Women for Women International has been operating now for about 4 years. So at the moment, for example, just to give you a concrete idea, at the moment there are 700 women who are enrolled in our program in northern Iraq. And these women come once a week to our training center to learn new skills, to learn about their rights, to learn about nutrition and hygiene, really, really practically addressing their needs within that context. And of course, northern Iraq is very different to northern Nigeria, where I was not that long ago, and is very different to Afghanistan. So whilst we have a generic program that we use, we then adapt it to the local circumstances so that the skills that we teach women are relevant to the markets within which they are living, and the kind of context, and of course also the specific kind of social challenges. So say when we talk about violence against women, and this is a very important component of the training that we provide, that there will be different aspects of violence against women that are particularly relevant in different contexts. So for example, in northern Iraq, about 99% of the women that I met and who come to our program will have experienced female genital mutilation, which is a traditional practice where parts or all of the vagina and labia are cut based on the belief, based really on controlling women's bodies, often disguised as a kind of an issue around cleanliness and preparing women to be wives and mothers.
And this isn't a religious thing, is it? Is it just their belief?
It's a belief. It sometimes is confused with religion and is being promoted as part of religion, but there is nothing in the actual scripts, religious scripts, that that encourage that practice.
And how old are these girls, women, children? How old are they when this takes place?
So in northern Iraq, between 8 and 9. So that's quite a bit older than is a kind of custom in some African countries. And so that means that the women I spoke to, they all remembered being cut, because when you age, but and also it's done in a garage with a razor blade. And there's no hygiene, and then it's very painful, and it also often leads to infections and to a lot of health complications. That's actually how in the classroom the trainers, who are all local from the countries where we operate, how they actually started to raise the issue. The focus of the lesson was on health. Yeah. And what affects your health, and looking at some traditional practices that have health implications, like female genital mutilation, like early marriages. A lot of the women I met had already been promised to their husbands when they were barely born, and then got married when they were 11, 12, 13. And
would they start having children at this young age?
And then they start having children. This is exactly it.
Oh, goodness me.
And so that their bodies are not ready. Their minds are not ready. It means that they drop out of school if they went to school to begin with.
Is education available to them?
Excuse me?
Is education available to them in North Iraq at the moment?
It varies.
Okay.
In a lot of the women that I met in Northern Iraq had some primary school education, but most of them then were taken out between 11 and 13, partly for financial reasons, partly because there's this worry that as you develop as a woman and you develop perhaps romantic inclinations, or you're interested in sex, that you need to be controlled, because of course one of the biggest beliefs is that if you're not a virgin, you're tainted goods, and you've tainted the honor of your family, and then you have no worth anymore.
Gosh.
Because their whole concept, and I think this is what I was saying to you earlier, what struck me the most is the sense that women are property of men. Mm-hmm. And that is not even by the women that I met, they never questioned that ever until they came to our program.
Because they didn't know any different.
Because they didn't know any different. So you're born, and then once you start to be able to actually, talk and engage, and you've already been married off to your cousin, and that by the age of 11 or 12, whatever, you're actually going to go off and get married, and you belong to your father, and your father controls you and controls your behavior. And if you don't behave under a certain code, then you dishonor. It's not just that you've done something that people don't like. No, you dishonor the family.
And then what are the consequences?
Yeah, of course they're consequences. Yeah, no. I mean, a lot of the women were telling us about, friends of them and neighbors who the family kill the girls or the wives, the women, if they transgress those borders. With no repercussions. Exactly, because this is so interesting. There's this one case where they told me about this young girl who had gone to have blood test, and the hospital called the father to give the results of the blood test and said that the blood test showed that this girl was pregnant. The father then has killed his own daughter, and then a couple of days later, the hospital calls back to say that they made an error and that the blood test was the wrong result.
Oh my God!
And then, horrendous. I mean, I was sitting there like, and then the women, and then the trainer said, okay, so what do we learn from this? And then the woman said, well, you shouldn't rush into killing your daughter. Instead of saying the father is the murderer, he needs to go to prison. And that is, it just shows you the extent to which this has been normalized.
It's horrific. So tell me about how Women for Women can now empower these women to have a voice.
So what was so incredible? So this was literally in the space of an hour, we're having these conversations, right? And we're in non-judgmental. This is never judgmental because it's no one's fault. Right? This is about access to information and about creating change from within and finding alternative ways to live together. And so within the space of that hour, through conversations, because there's always going to be a couple of women who say, well, actually, you know what, I think that's wrong. And I don't think you should kill your daughter. And I think that's, and then once you keep the conversation going, suddenly other women are feeling, actually, I've always thought that, but I've never dared to say it. And then the conversation starts. And then our trainers provide access to actual information. So then, for example, we had a 1-minute film that just shows images of the vagina, graphics, and what actually happens. So then the women, you should have seen it. They were looking at it like, okay, they had never seen a graphic image. Like they didn't know. They don't know what a vagina looks like because they've never been taught what it looks like. And therefore they've never known what actually happened to them physically. And that actually they were just cutting off pieces of flesh. Why would you do that if it causes huge health problems? So literally you could see the kind of eyes being opened and then the stones dropping and like, wow. And then a couple of days later, 3 of the women came to the trainer to say, I am now not going to have my daughter circumcised. She's 8 years old now. I was just going to take her and I will now no longer do that. And for me, seeing this directly, seeing how access to information can shift everything and can change everything, that shows the impact of a program like Women for Women International, bringing women together, breaking the isolation, providing access to information in a safe environment, can literally change everything.
Increasing their own health and well-being, because medical availability is limited. So just changing that well-being and that health and that hygiene, you know, from you going in there and being there for the last 4 years, it's just crucial. But educating them, and you know, a lot of them can't read. So how did the leaders go in to coach them and train them when they can't read? Is it all
so? Yeah, exactly. Basically, our program was always set up to help those who are at greatest risk of being left behind, those who fall through the grid, those who no one else is helping. That's really our mission. And so we know that that's not going to be easy by definition, right? Because if they are the ones at greatest risk of being left behind, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, and so because that's at the heart of everything we do, we cater for that. So all of our training materials are pictorial. They're just image-based, and we use a lot of repetition. We have amazing trainers, you know, who are patient, who often have come from those same communities themselves. And
from Iraq?
Sorry?
From Iraq, actually, yeah,
absolutely. In northern Iraq, in northern Nigeria, there was one woman I met, and she had actually graduated from our program in Rwanda, in Afghanistan, literally in all of our programs. In Congo, I was in the Democratic Republic of the Congo last year, and I met this incredible brick maker who is our trainer now, and she trains women in brick making. And brick making has always been an income generating activity that only men would do, because it's quite hard physically, but it's also very lucrative. And so, you know, of course, as we know, as so often is the case, women are then excluded from those activities. And so we actually said a couple of years ago, you know what, to the women, would you like to become brick makers? Because we could do this, you know, why not? And they're like, yes. And so we have, like, you know, hundreds of brick makers being trained. And this woman who I met, Senama, she had been a brickmaker for 2 years. She trained in our program. She then built a home for her mum, which she never had because her father died when she was young. And anyway, and so she's so good at it and so respected by her community that when Women for Women International mentioned that we need to have a trainer, everybody put Senama forward. Senama applied, and she now is a trainer. And there she was, training 50 women when I met her, you know. It was just really powerful, because I think this idea of being able to see yourself in someone else can really help you with having hope and working towards what you want to achieve, believing that if this person did, maybe I can do that too then, you know?
Yeah. And I love that, because you said it earlier on, you can't force anybody to make the change. You can only be the change and that you want to see, and then inspire other people. So like you say, she was inspired by this woman, and then others are being inspired as well, which is fantastic.
Exactly. It's like this. I actually see the world like this, to be honest. I see it as like a whole intricate connection of inspiration, of how we are inspired by others and how that then makes us change ourselves, and that in turn then inspires someone else. And that is how we all have an impact.
Yeah,
actually,
and I think
every day.
Sorry, you were saying every day.
Yeah. No, I think it's just something that is so close to my heart. This desire for us all to know that we have an impact just by being who we are. You know, it's really powerful. And I see it doesn't matter who you are. It literally doesn't matter who you are or where you are or how much you have, in inverted commas. You know, you have an impact, even if you can't see it.
Definitely. And I think what you do and what Women for Women doing is having a huge impact. And, you know, one of the stories that I remember after I first met you and did my research on Women for Women and what they do and how they empower women globally, especially from genocide, especially from this genital mutilation, and supporting the youth of these beliefs to not have to go through this horrific trauma. But I remember one of the stories that I first saw was a woman who had just come, it was in Rwanda, and it was war-torn, and her story was so impacting. And for those of you that are listening now, this is quite horrific, but it's true and it happened. And she was a pregnant woman, and she was beaten and raped. And then she was threatened that her child would be cut from her. But they did all of that anyway and still did what they said they were going to do. But she is now thriving, right?
Yeah, I met her, quite a while ago now, like 8 years ago. And she, and at the time she was actually someone who was really respected by the other women. And that's why she caught my eye, because she was in the midst of a group of women dancing and singing. And I could tell that she had a special position within the women and special influence. And I wanted to talk to her. And that's when she told me her story. And she showed me the scar on her belly where they had cut her child out. And she is, there are many women, unfortunately, who have experienced something like this. But what is very special with Fatuma is that she was able and willing and wanting to talk about this, to show that you can survive, and with time you can thrive again, that just because something is broken within you doesn't mean that you are broken. Yeah. And that is something that she is in my boardroom.
Mm-hmm. And she's empowering others, from her story, she's making an impact within her own community. And, there's another story. Not only do you help to educate these women as leaders and understand skills that they never even knew, and, how to grow their crops, how to grow their own food and be nutritionally available and have more self-love and know their rights, but also helping them to become entrepreneurs like the brick maker and like the lady in Bosnia who has now, she's running a team of 300, right? I can't remember what her name is.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So that, that not everybody will end up with that huge of a success story, but some of them will, and some of them become incredible entrepreneurs, and some of them become trainers, and some of them find a job in a hotel, and that's great too. But the fact of the matter is that this investment, it really pays off, and it pays off on so many levels. The ones that you can see in terms of the jobs that they have and the income they generate, and the ones that you cannot see, which is the confidence and the fire that's shining within them. When I asked them, what do you want to do now in Sinama? She didn't talk about, I want to buy more things. I want to build another house. No, she said to me, Britta, in a couple of years' time, I want to set up an organization like Women for Women International, and I want to help many more women.
Amazing.
Because that is what happens every time, that when you receive help,
yes,
you want to help. And that's so beautiful.
Yeah, amazing. I love that. And I think what you do is so incredible. And people, when you say investment, now, for those guys that you are listening, the investment isn't for these women who have nothing, literally, apart from the air that they breathe and maybe the food that is around them and the support of their family. When the investment is offered to them from Women for Women, it is an investment of time, and it's a commitment for them to make a change. It's a game-changing thing. But the investment comes from sponsorship and the charity. And that's why Women for Women are always working so hard to obtain the charity sponsorships, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So we're really, so grateful to everyone who supports us, and we have government grants, and we have corporates who support us. But the most special and key area of support comes from individuals like you and me, and you can support one woman at the time with £23 a month or €29 a month for a year to enroll in our program. You will get information about, we call them sisters, about your sister, and you're invited to write letters to her, and we will translate those letters and we will deliver them, and they actually get to the women and to the actual women that you're sponsoring. And if she can, she will also write back to you. I've been a sponsor ever since I started with Women for Women, so 11 years, and I've had the pleasure of meeting some of them because I travel. And so every time I travel to a country where I'm actually sponsoring one, I try and meet her. I have exchanged letters. It's real and it means so much. So, of course, the sponsorship money means a lot, and this cash stipend that we give to women to help them to learn how to save money, and all of that is vitally important. But the knowledge that there is someone in another country, possibly on the other side of the world, who cares and who tells them in a letter, I see you, that is the biggest impact. That is so powerful that I literally just cannot overemphasize.
Well, that is bringing back their self-belief, which is something that many of them would never have even experienced before, to know that they are valued, to know that their life is valued, especially when we talk about these war-torn countries where women are abused and, you know, subjected to violence, that they don't know that they have so much worth within them. So to be sponsored, to have that connection with a sister is so empowering, not just for you as that sponsor, but also for that sister who's receiving that support, not just financially, but emotionally.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Absolutely.
And I want to ask you now, because obviously what you do is so incredible, but it doesn't come without your heartstrings being pulled. Now you've got your boardroom of women there, but also you're going to have that boundaries. You're going to have that support system to make sure that your own well-being is looked after. So Britta, you travel so much and you're in all of these different countries, you're seeing all of these different traumatic experiences that women have gone through. How do you support your own well-being and self-care during your time in these places?
So I have quite a rigid self-care routine. And I try wherever I can to keep that going when I travel. It's not always possible. For example, I was in northern Nigeria recently, and I wasn't able to go running in the morning, which is what I normally always do, because it wasn't safe enough. I had to be accompanied by the staff team all the time, and so I wasn't able to leave the hotel after 5:30 in the evening, and I wasn't able to leave before 8 o'clock in the morning when we went off to work. So sometimes it's not possible. I then do other things. So I've started yoga. So I do yoga and I can do that in the hotel room, no problem. I do meditation. That's all really helpful. And I try and keep with my nutrition routine. Again, sometimes that's not possible. But I also try now not to stress about that, because I realize that if I get too obsessed with it, that doesn't actually help me either. No. So if I know I'm going to be in northern Nigeria and I'm literally can only eat porridge for because I just have to be careful with my stomach and this and that, then that's so be it. And I know that when I come back home, I can gorge out on vegetables and fruit.
And you know, we talk about that. You are a vegan. You decided to completely go vegan a few months ago. So, you know, plant-based it's still up in arms and people are disbelieving, but I am a great believer that plant-based really does work. How are you finding that? Apart from just being on porridge when you're in these countries, how are you finding being a vegan?
Super challenging.
Okay.
Because it's just really, really hard because, you can get vegetables everywhere, but you have to ask for them specifically without any cheese or without any butter or without any, and sometimes it's very hard because if you are invited or you are, someone has cooked a meal for you with the very little food that they have. Mm-hmm. So being a vegan sometimes is really, really challenging when I travel because often I will visit women in their homes and they will prepare food for me, which is a really important gesture, and of course it's absolutely wonderful. I can't, if they have prepared vegetables with some cheese in it or maybe with butter, or I just cannot not eat it. So I will not eat the meat, and I can explain that. I think that's more or less now universally understood. Yeah. But everything else, I will just then make an exception, and I will just go with it. And I will just say, you know what, this is okay, because actually it's more important that I can honor this beautiful hospitality than it is to stick to my regime. But
at home, it's all good, and it's very easy for you to follow.
Yeah, exactly. It's really easy. My daughter is a vegan as well, and my husband is pretty much a vegetarian, and is also really supportive and will cook without dairy products or without eggs. So yeah, and I think in the UK, I think it's just really easy now. Just yesterday, I was shopping with my daughter, and there's so many products available now. From chocolate. I mean, you can be as unhealthy as you like and still be a vegan.
Yeah, well, we won't push that part.
I know.
We want to stay on the
That's so interesting, isn't it, Alison? Because people think, if you're vegan, you're super healthy. That does not necessarily happen.
I've seen a lot of overweight vegans because they either then compensate by eating bread or, other things that are not possibly so good for them. And then it doesn't really help with their health. But as long as you're focused, and I think one of the most important things you said is your self-care whilst traveling is not to beat yourself up about it. It's to make sure that when you're at home, you do your running, and that's kind of a moving mindset. And the meditation is so important for everybody to really understand. It's been around for thousands of years, right? And the health benefits of meditation, especially for you in your work, are so important. Do you have a coach that helps you to deal with all of the emotions, or do you just focus on it with your meditation?
I do. I haven't for a while now, actually, and I've been thinking that I need, but I've always every so often meet someone where I know that if I can have conversations with that person, that they can really help me to create the space where I can digest and get some distance from, because I sometimes have the tendency to just take it all in, and it can be sometimes really overwhelming. And so I've just recently actually met someone who's been helping me to through meditation to kind of create a little bit of a boundary and just look after myself a little bit more. So I will still feel a lot, but just to be a bit careful, because sometimes it can really, really just haunt me.
Yeah, and I think it's so important. The reason I asked you is because all psychologists have to have a psychologist to speak to because of some of the details that they will take on board. And, when we talk about self-care and well-being, it's your mental health and well-being as well, so that it doesn't impact your family, right? Because you still have a family, even though you do such incredible work, you still have a family of 2 daughters and a husband as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And it's like, for me, what really was the breakthrough is this idea of be the change. Yeah. You cannot just do the change. You need to be the change. And therefore, if you are wanting for others to look after themselves, and that's really important to me, I have to lead by example.
So true.
And that's really my main motivating factor. I have to be really honest. That is what gets me to do all of this. Yeah. And that's good.
So what top tips would you give to anybody else that is maybe just in need of looking after themselves, whether they're from a war-torn country, whether they're in the UK and not really stepping into what they really have available to them? What top tips would you say to any woman who wants to create change?
My top tip is be your own best cheerleader. And I actually do this with myself because sometimes I find it really hard to stand up for myself. And I actually do this mental acrobatics where I imagine I'm not me. I am looking at myself as if I am my best friend. And because I would always cheer my friends on. I mean, I would cheer my enemies on, to be quite honest, because I'm so committed to helping people fulfill their potential that I create this imaginary setup where I cheer myself on like I would with my best friend. And because actually it's not okay if I don't do that to myself, right? And so that I think is the most important thing. So because it's the doubts, it's the critic, the voice in your head that is keeping you from looking after yourself, from believing in your dreams, from picking up the phone and making this call that you've been wanting to make, or whatever it is that you want to do and you're not doing. Like, become your own most cheerful cheerleader.
Amazing. Britta, I know that we have been chatting for ages and we could continue to chat for ages and ages. And I love when you said earlier on, this is not work for you, albeit it is work, but it's something that has been such a passion. And because of that, would you say that you actually are living a vibrant life?
I definitely feel I'm living a vibrant life without a question. And I love it. And actually, I cherish it. And I often wake up in the morning and I wonder what's going to happen today. You know, I'm excited about life. And of course, there are days when I'm tired and exhausted, but I know how I can help myself. And sometimes helping myself means, you know what, that's okay. You're going to be exhausted today. Lie in bed, stay in bed. Don't do anything. Watch that's okay too. And that's part of living a vibrant life, right? You get to determine what that means to you. And I love my vibrant life.
Amazing. And one person's vibrant life is completely different to another. And what I love so much is that your energy, albeit you say sometimes I might not want to wake up, your energy is always there because it's always that passion and purpose to help everybody else. But I think the biggest takeaway that you have said is you have to take care of yourself first.
Yes.
100%. You have to.
Because you are the change, right?
Do you know what? I've thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you, and I hope all the listeners have too. And please, can you share, if somebody that is listening right now would love to sponsor a sister, to make a change, to be that change for somebody else, to pay it forward, how can they do that?
Yes, you can visit our website, womenforwomen.org.uk, and there's right there, you will see Sponsor a Woman Now. You can sign up there. If that's not possible financially, you can follow us on social media. You can spread the word about the work that we're doing. We have an amazing campaign coming up for International Women's Day on the 8th of March next year, where we're inviting people to write messages. So there are so many ways in which you can get involved, and we would love that. And thank you so much, Alison, for having me. I also really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep making the impact, and just keep being that change. It's incredible what you do. And I'm sure everybody who's listening will really, really feel that heart-centered connection with you too for what you do, the passion and the desire. So I'm going to wish you an amazing day for the rest of your day, and look forward to continuing to follow the journey.
Thank you, Alison. Honestly, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. So I want to say a huge thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast. I really am so grateful for all of you. We are so grateful for all of you that are tuning in, and that if you feel that you have got value from this podcast, if you feel that there's so much more that you want to hear, then please do go over to iTunes, leave a review, and share this episode with some of your best friends or people you know would also really, really get value from it. We only grow through you, and we're only here because of you. We want you to know that each and every woman out there, we are supporting you, we have your back, and we really want to bring you as much value as possible. So from all of us here at Vibrant Balanced Health, we want to say thank you so much for listening to us today. Your honesty is so important, and we really, really just want to help more and more women live their more vibrant life and create impact. And that only happens with your support and with your connection to share this message with thousands of women. So thank you so much for stopping in. And if you feel called to, please do pop on over, leave a review, say hi, leave your comments, let us know what you'd like to hear more of, and we will be sure to bring you even more value over and over again.